episode, we try to understand the different implications of Web3, metaverse, generative AI in the hospitality and the travel space. This is a very special episode because, as you can see, we are not in the usual fully used room, but we are in a very different location. And to introduce the location, I'm going to go to my first guest of the day, and that is Paul. Paul, thank you so much for being with us today. Can you tell us a little more about yourself, what you do, your company, and the location we are filming from?
Oh, hi everybody. My name is Paul Burrows. I am the Principal Software Solutions Manager for what we call reality capture at Leica Geosystems, which is part of the Hexagon Group. So I work specifically with anything to do with reality capture in our software. So 3D laser scanning, mobile mapping, where we create representations of 3D space and then create these amazing platforms to share the data. So today we're sitting in an asset that we scanned with one of our scanners, the RTC360. We process that data in a cloud platform that we have called Reality Cloud Studio. And we've got this wonderful mesh, which we then used to a super lightweight mesh, I should say. So a sub 100 megabyte mesh that we then have dropped into spatial, and that's where we're having the meeting today. And you can see we'll maybe get the chance to talk about Reality Cloud Studio later. That's what's playing on the screen now. And so this is a great way to not only create content that you can share in metaverse spaces, but also a great way to kind of collaborate and meet in spaces which are otherwise inaccessible. So this location is in the UK. You guys are from all over, and here we are today sitting in this virtual space. So that's me, and that's a bit of an intro to the data and where we are.
Well, that's pretty cool. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to introduce Luca. Then maybe before we even start, you can walk us around for a couple of minutes so we can take a look at the space and for people looking at this in 2D. So, Luca, first of all, thank you for arranging this. You were the point of contact with Paul, so it's very, very appreciated. You've been here before a few times, but for people that don't know what you do, could you introduce yourself in a few words?
Yeah, sure. Thank you again, Simone, for having me here again, and for having me in the Polybius community. Actually, yeah, I'm Luca Lupatelli. I'm a digital project manager at Hexagon Geosystem, and aside of that, I'm very passionate about all the metaverse topic, and I'm just more curious. I define myself like an explorer because I really what I'm doing, trying to explore, words, creations, and this is more a passion. But yeah, that's pretty much me, and I'm not going to take more time on that. So thanks, Simone, again.
Well, thank you. And then we got Ricardo. We got a few issues in getting Ricardo on the meeting, so we're going to test again. In the meantime, Paul, let's go for a little walk, and maybe you can follow us with the camera. But I would love to take a look around. So maybe you can tell me more about the location because that's pretty cool. I didn't have much time to go around, so maybe you can tell me more about this space. Okay?
Yeah,
So we're following you.
Yeah, no worries. So I live in the West Midlands in the UK, and we have a very, very extensive canal network. In fact, I live very near to Birmingham, which has more canals than Venice. Would you believe? So, which is a very impressive fact that we tell everyone because it's maybe the most interesting fact. But yeah, the building that we're looking at here is, and what we haven't got in the distance is this is right next to a canal and the canal network, and effectively this warehouse, bonded warehouse, is where goods would be stored until they were kind of cleared, various taxes were paid and stuff like that. So it's a very historical sort of site of significance. And then you've obviously got all the offices that are associated with the building as well. But yeah, there's been a lot of regeneration in the past few years. So these buildings are now very, very looked after. So this is now no longer a warehouse. It's function rooms down here. into the distance, which you can't see where we kind of have the hills in the background is you drive down there or walk down there towards the actual canal, which then joins all the way through to Birmingham and beyond. But yeah, this is the space. So you can see the old cobbled streets. There's a pub which is very nice called the Old Wharf Inn, which is just over the way there, over the fences in the distance.
That's
you can see the tents.
That's the one on the left, right? That's
yeah,
the one
over there. Yeah, and
okay.
And so effectively, what we're looking at here is just, we've scanned this with the RTC 360, and then we've processed this into a really, really low polygon, lightweight mesh that we can use in spatial. So I think in total, Luca, this was maybe 58 megabytes or something like that.
Yeah, it was very small actually. It was like maybe 70 megabytes, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was very small, and obviously, like the video that's playing on the background is a much higher quality data set with a higher point count. But spatial has some limitations around the mesh size that you need to use. You can see on I've just spotted actually, Simone, if you turn around, you can see an Easter egg of my face plastered on the wall of this building where I got captured while I was scanning. So yeah, I didn't manage to escape from the capture, unfortunately.
Okay.
This is the process.
This is like an Easter egg. It's something that you wanted to do, or just
no. It's completely unintentional. But let's call it an Easter egg.
Okay. So, because I think this is pretty interesting for destinations, because a lot of I get this question pretty often, right? And for hotels, maybe this is perceived as easier, but for destinations, this is usually something that is perceived as pretty complicated. But I looked at the file. Actually, Luca sent me the file a couple of days ago to upload it, and it was like probably 60 megabytes, something like that. So, what is in terms of timing? So let's say we got a destination that wants to start creating a digital twin in the metaverse. So let's say in spatial. What is the process?
Well, I mean, the first thing is you actually need to capture the space, and the best way to do that, the most accurate way to do that, is by laser scanning, 3D laser scanning. So we can either use a handheld laser scanner like a BLK to go, or we can use what we call an RTC 360 or a BLK 360, and we basically just move around the space and we capture lots of positions, and then we turn this into one cohesive project and one cohesive data set. So, for example, the video that you can see playing behind you, Simone, this is a data set from a World War I memorial in the US. That was probably, 20 setups worth of data. And then obviously you've got the full geometry, you've got the color, you've got the photography, you've got the panoramic images. So it just becomes a really nice space to walk through virtually. And, obviously I can't get on a plane tomorrow and jump across to Detroit or wherever this was and see it, or I could, but it would cost me a lot of money. So the fact that people can access this and see this in, incredible high fidelity is very valuable. But yeah, ultimately it's a simple process now, because what we do is we upload the scan data to a cloud platform, which we call Reality Cloud Studio, and it automatically creates these assets for us. So these meshed assets. So it's a completely hands-off approach. You just, click on it and say generate a mesh, and it goes off. And then what you can see in the background, this tour that I created, that was created with a couple of clicks. And then you can share that tour directly, or you can share a link to the asset directly, so that anyone can jump in and see that through an iPad, on an iPhone, or a browser. So it's super accessible as well. But yeah, that's the basis of how we get from a scan through to delivering, these meshed assets which we can explore.
So let's say, who is because right now, if a destination need a new photo shooting, for example, you call a photographer. Now, who is the right person to call to do the laser scanning? Is it still like a video maker, a photographer? It should be a dev. What is the profession we're dealing with when we start working on a project like that?
No, I mean, that's a really interesting question, Simone, because over the last few years, we've seen a definite shift in our customer base. And I think any manufacturer has seen a shift in the customer base to a lot more people accessing this technology. And I don't mean just the end result, but actually the data collection. So we've gone from products, when I first started doing laser scanning in 2003-ish, something like that. These products cost about £150,000, or whatever that is in euros, 160,000 euros. And you can now pick up a laser scanner for anywhere between kind of 15 and 20,000 euros essentially. So the price of access to deliver this data has got really, really, really there's a much lower barrier to entry. But what we're seeing is yes, surveyors use the kit, but there are also, as you just said, there's photographers, there's there's let's call them digital surveyors who may not be official surveyors, who are putting everything on GPS control, GPS as in putting it in the real world coordinate systems. There's people who are previously had thought this was they were not able to do it, but now the price point allows us to do it. There you go. There's a picture of a scanner. Whoever's just shared that image into the scene, that's fantastic.
Yeah, that's the one, right? Because again, what I'm trying to do with you guys today it's more like a technical episode, right? So we're not talking about like possible applications or the philosophy of the metaverse. I really want to understand how you guys do it. And so this is a laser scanner, right?
Yeah. So this is a laser scanner. So if you're looking at that picture, effectively in the middle, you've got a laser, and you've got various cameras. So the laser captures the 3D data, and the cameras obviously capture the color. You do a setup, which typically takes, let's say, 2 minutes to capture the scan data and the color, and then you move to another position. Now, one of the great things about this device, in particular, the RTC360, is it's got a system that actually tracks your position through the 3D space. So it's actually creating the model as you're moving along, effectively. So it's creating this registered data set as you're moving through the project, which means it's not as complicated as it used to be, which means more people can use it, which means more people can create these tours and these experiences. So that the product that you're looking at there is about, I don't know, say 45,000 euros, something that kind of price. But yeah, the BLK 360 and the second generation of the BLK 360 are, like I said, between like 15 and 20,000 euros. So there's lots of different products. They all deliver roughly the same thing. This 3D point cloud, there's obviously differences in the collection speed, the accuracy, also the quality of the color and the panoramic imagery. But yeah, that's in essence what we do. We also have some handheld devices as well. There's a device called the BLK to go. We also have a flying laser scanner called the BLK to fly. We have one which attached to robots, which is called the BLK Arc, which stands for...
So is it, and I don't know if this is just a blasphemy, but it's like a laser drone?
Yeah, exactly that. So if anyone has ever watched any kind of crazy movies where they've seen something flying around, scanning something in 3D, that is now a reality. You can send the BLK to fly up, and you can scan, maybe you scan the inside with a BLK 360 and you scan the top of the building with the BLK to fly, and you bring that all together to create one big data set. But yeah, we've got lots of different technology for delivering, a very accurate representation of, a 3D space.
So that's the 360, right? The black.
That's the 360. Yeah. So that came out last summer, and that also has this Viz technology that allows you to track between positions, so it knows where it is relative to the last position. So you scan, you pick up your tripod and walk to the next location. You scan, and it stitches it all together for you automatically.
So if I understand correctly, over the last 15 years or so, the price of doing something like that, just to scan the environment, went down by 10 times, something like that.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah, something along those lines. And also the speed at which the data is processed has improved. And now we have solutions, like Reality Cloud Studio that's playing on the screen, where you drag and drop this data into the browser, you put it in the cloud, and it can do registration, it can do meshing, it can create these videos all within a cloud platform. So it creates a really nice ecosystem that's super easy to use. And also, Reality Cloud Studio starts at about 19 euros a month or 20 euros a month for a subscription for the lowest tier. So someone can get started very, very easily by sharing this data for a nice low price as well.
Oh, that's fascinating. Luca, let me ask you something. And the Italian industry, it's as many other European destinations. They are not. I don't want to be. I'm trying to be as much politically correct as I can, but let's say they're not like always super tech savvy. Let's put it like that, right? And so let's say that tomorrow we got a destination like Rome. Okay, I live in Rome, so that makes sense. That wants to do something similar for I don't know, the Roman Forum, for example, right? So step one is we call you guys. You come with the laser scan or the laser scan drones, whatever. And then step two is creating the space. Now, in terms of understanding what you guys do, because I think this is another problem. I think that for a lot of people, this is just a simple virtual tour. Do you think that we will need to re-educate destinations to make sure they understand that not only this is feasible now, but is 10 times less expensive than it was 10 years ago?
Well, I think that's a very valid point, because if you think about that, what Paul just said, we are kind of moving versus a kind of democratization of 3D asset creation, right? So I think it's going to be very important for people to understand that now you can easily build up something, a twin of like an historical place or an area. I mean, it's kind of easy. You get a scanner, and you need to know how to use the scanner. And then maybe, Paul, you can add more here, because how much is easy to play with the scanner. That's another point, right? But now you can have a twin of the Colosseum, for instance. For people that don't know the Colosseum at all, people can have the chance to enter the Colosseum virtually. That is an accurate twin of the real one. So I think it's very important for people to understand that, for entrepreneurs, for even for the municipality of Rome, to understand that there is something that is happening that can support a city like Rome to attract tourism. So it's just
I agree, Luca, and I think that what's really exciting is we talk about digital twins, and we talk about this representation, but it's a way to also protect that tourism as well, because if you've got millions of people trampling through these places every single year, there's possibly going to be damage. So you want to make sure you've got an as-built record of the site. So not only can you share it and you can allow people virtual access, but if, for example, you have to close it for a season because there's some work that needs to be done, or maybe there's a part of it that is inaccessible, why should that mean that someone doesn't get to see it just because it's inaccessible? Use the scan. Give them an example. Give them the ability to view it on their phone or their iPad, so they don't feel like they've missed out. And also,
let me give you sorry if I interrupt, but I have a perfect example for you. Okay, so I was on a plane today, and I was coming back home, and I had this wonderful lady, probably late 60s, something like that, from Florida, and she was coming from Paris. She was going to Rome, and we started talking. And she said, "Look, I want to see this and that, blah blah, whatever, the Colosseum." And I said, I really would like to see the catacombs. That I don't know, for whatever reason, there's something people want to see. But she said to me, "So look, Is it very hard to get in? Like, because I don't know if you've ever been there, but there are a lot of steps going down, and it's you need to walk a lot. Now you need to be a little physically fit to get there. And I thought, I wouldn't recommend it to you. It's a great experience, but you can be a little more claustrophobic, and it takes, you need to be. Probably, I wouldn't suggest it to somebody in her late 60s. So, and I think that the metaverse, in this sense, or VR or extended reality, spatial computing, call it as you like, could to a certain extent democratize the industry of travel that historically has always been very snobby. And another thing, and I'm going to stop because Michael always say that I'm the king of long questions. But uh, my wife lived in Egypt for a little while, right? And she told me that now they are closing down many tombs just because tourists are damaging them. And my fear is that I will never be able to see it because maybe in 20 years this will be closed forever, and this will be the only way to discover that location. So, do you agree with me that in a certain sense this can democratize the travel industry?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the thing is, at the minute, for example, the data we're seeing on the screen, yes, you can visit it physically. There's no limitations because it's not being damaged. But my background, Simone, I didn't know whether you knew this, but now you know it. My background is in archaeology. So that's how I got into 3D laser scanning in the first place, was not only
Oh,
scanning to preserve stuff, but was actually scanning to share and disseminate stuff that people couldn't see. So, for example, I remember one of my early scans I did was of this castle, and it was a ruined castle, but there's no public access to the castle. So it was a project to share the data with the local community because it was unsafe. So the children couldn't play on it anymore. People couldn't walk around it anymore because bricks were falling off and stones were falling off. So we scanned this castle and created this beautiful 3D model and a representation of what it looked like in the 14th or 15th century. But without laser scanning, we wouldn't have had that very accurate basis to do that. And we wouldn't have also had an as-built record. So yeah, for me, from a personal standpoint, it's very, very important to start with a very accurate baseline of data, which we can then use for multiple different things. And people are, not everyone has limitless money. Not everyone can travel the world and see all these places. So to have virtual representations of them is, there's already tons of Google Maps tours that you can do, and there's already multiple startups that allow you to visit sites, virtually. But the thought, I think I'm from a 3D first mentality, and there's a generation of people behind me and younger kids who expect a 3D experience, not a 2D panoramic experience. They want to immerse themselves in the data sets. So, I think about my kids using Fortnite. They expect 3D. So this has to be part of any plan in hospitality moving forwards.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And on top of that, I think that for some tourists, that is the only way to go. Again, I always think about people with limited mobility, for example, or elder tourists. So it totally makes sense. But sorry, Luca, I just want to ask another one to Paul,
Yeah.
because if your background is from archaeology, I was thinking this could also create like an additional level of tourism. So let's think about uh, I don't know if you've ever been to Pompeii, for example, in Italy, right?
I have,
Uh,
yeah. Mhm.
and you will never be able to see it as it used to be. So do you think in that case the scanning could also help to have a glimpse of what destinations look like in the past? Do you think this could be a viable like a business solution, like an extra revenue stream for destinations?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's up to the person who's collecting the data as to how they want to monetize this, right? Or if a surveying company is collecting this on behalf of, let's say, Pompeii or City of Rome or whatever, it's down to the person who's paying for the survey to understand how they want to use that. But what's to say you don't create a full digital twin of Pompeii? And by the way, there's been a lot of scanning done at Pompeii already. But yeah, who's to say you don't scan the whole thing and provide someone with like a pass to access that 3D data, and they have, you know, a month or a year access or unlimited access or whatever, so they can go in and see that data. Or maybe in the future you want to download that 3D environment and you want to access it through your VR headset. I bet Luca would be interested to do that because he's always in his VR headset. So you know, or even, you know, even in your phone or whatever. But I definitely think that there is an untapped, you know, revenue stream for sure. But yeah, it's just how people want to, you know, what people want to do it. I mean, I think that oftentimes it's best to give it free of charge, and that creates the hook and the demand, and then people say, okay, well, I've seen it in 3D and I love it, I've seen it on my screen, but I actually want to go and visit this place. And then you can even have like links to holiday companies, you can link out to websites where you can book the tours, you can almost use the 3D space as like a hub for, you know, this is just my idea, that you use it as a hub for then other people. So people pay for a virtual advertising billboard space within the virtual space, maybe. You know, you don't want it to be, you don't want Pompeii to become like Las Vegas, but I hope you can probably understand what I mean.
Yeah, but to a certain extent, it's a destination that can be managed in that way. And anyway, this is something that is happening anyway in a 2D environment. Like if you go on Booking.com, you will have advertisers. If you go to Expedia, you will have advertisers. So it's not really a blasphemy here. The only thing we're talking about is making sure that when you are into this 3D experience, you are not redirected to a 2D experience that will break the magic. And you know, so in metaverse or in game or in VR advertisement, immersive commerce, that's a big topic in the industry, because right now that's the problem with pre-visualization, both in hotels and in destinations. You can get into a destination, you can get into a hotel room, but if you want to book it, or if you want to book a package or a tour, whatever, you still need to go back to a 2D environment. So yeah, that's a great way of putting it.
Yeah, that's really exciting actually, Simone, because there's a number of companies that have approached us in the last sort of few months since we announced Reality Cloud Studio, and they kind of provide this layer across the top. And we were like, okay, well, you know, if we have an API, and there is an API, but, you know, a more formal API that allows these companies to kind of build this experience, but in a real 3D sense. So like you said, I love that phrase that you just used. We say when we don't want to break the magic. So you keep people in the space whilst they're doing this stuff. And it's a little bit to me like the vision for the Apple Vision Pro, where you've got all these screens, but they're all in 3D, and it's still a common experience, but it's just done in a slightly different way. Does that make sense?
Well, but I think
I don't know if I can add that something, Simone, just to follow what Paul was just mentioning, because now I always, when we talk about 3D, I always think about, you know, the new generation, right? Because Paul said, the new generation expecting things in 3D. And that's true. I mean, if you think about that, Gen Z, for instance, is the only generation that is born with internet, right? Maybe generation Alpha is going to be the generation that will grow up with 3D, and they expect to see only things in 3D. We are happy with the 2D, but what about the expectation of the new generation? And even if we think flat today, because we are happy with flat, right? Tomorrow, the new generation maybe is not going to be happy with flat. They before to go and visit, for instance, Egypt, they want to visit it in 3D with their avatar, maybe with their friend, have a multiplayer experience in Egypt first. Maybe experience some virtual services, because this could happen probably, and then they could book directly. As Paul mentioned, you know, that there are some there is some movement around the commerce in 3D environments, and that will book directly while they are experiencing a 3D experience. Looks like weird, say it like that, but you know, I think that is going to be crucial. Understand the new generation. So
totally, Luca. And on top of that,
sorry for interrupting.
No, it's great. But I think you're a little younger than me. But look, let me tell you something. Because we lived something similar 20 years ago, and Paul, you will remember that. Okay, so at some point we had websites for hotels and destinations, and but the only thing you could do on these websites was pre-visualization. You could not book. So if you wanted to book, you had to write an email or send a fax or give the hotel a call. So it was the same thing, and then we moved to an e-commerce experience. And now it's like you don't go to Amazon and then you got your stuff in the cart, and at some point you say, okay, now I need to call Bezos and put and get the order, right? So you don't want that because you're so used to the e-commerce being an integral part of the web. And that is exactly the same thing that is happening with metaverses. Like I understand, Paul, you got a kid, right? So I don't know if he or she plays in Roblox, for example. But of course, if they want to buy a skin in Roblox, they don't want to do it on a 2D environment. They don't want to send a fax. That is exactly what is happening. It's Darwinian to me. It's not even innovation anymore.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I completely agree with that. I think you're showing your age talking about faxes, Snowden.
So, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. I have used the fax machine, so I think that ages me slightly. But yeah, it's no, I agree. And my kids do all play Fortnite. At least two of them play Roblox. They play multiple, Rec Room and all these other different applications. But yeah, they all expect things to be done in a certain way. And also, it sounds crazy, but there's also an expectation from all of them that everything will be in the cloud. So, I talked to my son the other day and I said, oh, you download the application. He went, why do I want to download it? Why can't I just use it on Google? I was just like, yeah, okay, yeah. So, there's other things you have to consider when sharing these experiences. But I think we also have to understand, like Luca said, it's just the expectation. It's how do we preempt where we're going to be? But I genuinely feel that 3D has to be the way forward. But it has to be 3D done well, and it has to feel real. That's the point. Even though you're thousands of miles away, you have to feel like you're present for that small amount of time.
Yeah, totally. And again, I
it,
think it's really just a question of normal evolution. It's not we're not talking about I don't think we're talking about an innovation anymore. Like maybe the only innovation here is the quality of the camera or the scans. But in terms of like the technology adoption, this is just the normal evolution of things. And I think, and this is where especially Luca, and you know this very well, especially in the hospitality space, we got a problem because everything that is a little more like new can be perceived as almost blasphemy, right? But it's not like we go from the fax machine again to a Neuralink implant in the brain. Technology doesn't work like that. It takes time. But in our lifespan, think about how the interaction we do have with technology changed over time. And I always look at my father, for example, in the 80s, he was super anti computers, and now he spent like 8 hours a day on freaking Facebook. That's the same guy.
oh
So
my gosh.
I hate talking about generations, and I understand I think it's a little it's like oversimplifying it, but there's no other way to go. And again, my kid, it like I was reading this article from the guy from Humane. Probably you heard of the company. And he said something in the lines of, for my kid, an iPhone will be obsolete. And for us, it looks like, wow, this is just freaking impossible. But this is exactly what is happening. And I think like Apple Vision Pro is making this all quicker. But yeah, it's interesting times ahead. But look, take a look on your back, Paul. You see, this is what I was telling you about. The Pyramid of Giza. is going to be closed for a few years for restoration that is longly due. And in this case, that could be like a great alternative. Okay, so you cannot really visit it, but you can have this very immersive experience, and maybe it can be like gamified to a certain extent. This is something we didn't really talk about, but maybe we can have a little more fun with the experience. So well, let me go to Luca, so otherwise you'll never talk. Sorry. Luca, what
Don't worry, don't
about?
worry. I think that is important because here the real expert is Paul, the reality capture guru.
Guy?
So I think it was a good question for him. That
Okay, so I will ask the question, and whoever wants to answer. But what do you think about the implementation of gamification in this kind of experience?
I mean, the first thing I would say is there's platforms like Spatial, which already exist, which are highly gamified, right? So, that you can layer stuff in here, you can build experiences in here. So anywhere we can pull the data that has got, that gamification aspect, then I think that's a good thing. One trend that we've seen recently is obviously people bringing these types of assets into the Unreal Fortnite editor or Unreal Engine Fortnite editor. I can't remember the exact term. Where it's a very powerful game engine, and we're not limited by the polygons and the resolution and everything, because they can handle very, very large files. Spatial is not, by its nature, is not designed to handle these incredibly large meshes. But even so, even the mesh again on the screen that you're seeing is probably only a couple of hundred megabytes. Well, let's say 300 megabytes per se, and that becomes a very nice experience. But again, it all comes down to the expectation. But certainly we're working towards having open standards, which means that if someone has created a data set with our scanners, they can export the data in a format that can be read by multiple different engines, whether that's gaming engines or metaverse engines, or even 3D modeling packages. For example, what we're seeing on the screen, again, it could be exported as an OBJ. Well, that's like one of the most common standard formats used across the world for 3D visualization. That means that will go into a huge majority of software solutions. And who's to say that you don't have an Easter egg hunt within this space, or you have to go and find all the clues to get to the top of the tower or something. But that's down to the creatives to build that, and tell that story. And I think for me, that's also where I feel like there's a lot of excitement in the fact that we can tell a story in a space that only lends itself to being in that full 3D space. And the other thing as well, Luca will tell you this, is yes, you can access it through a gamepad. Yes, you can access it through an iPad, but you can also access it through VR, which has this whole other level of immersive nature to what you're looking at. I don't think there's much more to add on that, but I love the notion of gamifying this stuff. It's great.
And we did Luca, you remember that we did a full episode on the problem of interoperability and the need for standards. So we're not going to talk too much about that, but you can go, probably was the second or the third episode of Polybius. You can watch it today. It was a pretty interesting one. But okay, Luca,
sorry, Simone, just to finish that off then, we did just actually, we announced at Hexagon Live last month that there was going to be, we've kind of formalized our partnership with NVIDIA around getting data into their Omniverse platform. And part of that is using what we call the USD format, which is Universal Scene Descriptor, or USDX, I think it's maybe now called. And that's part of the plan for a lot of people, is to get into this USD format so it can be used in multiple places. So that's really where the interoperability will come from. If you create an asset for Spatial, you should be able to use that in Unreal. You should be able to use that in Unity or Omniverse. That's really the point of the interoperability, which everyone's striving for now.
Isn't USD the one developed by Pixar back in the days?
Yeah, exactly that. So it's come out of Pixar research, and now there's a conglomerate of like I don't know, maybe even 100 companies that are all kind of behind the format effectively.
Is it open source, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's genius. Okay, makes sense. Okay, great. Luca, so okay, let's go back to destinations and hotels, right? So uh, first thing first, we go with the scanning, and then we create the project itself. Now we need to market it in a certain way, and Paul is correct when he says that you can have an restaurant, for example. It could be something more than what you, or at least something different from what you do have in the real locations. Now I'm thinking in the next few years we will probably need more people to be able to do immersive marketing, let's call it like that, right? And of course we got the tech part, and that's you guys, but then we need to have some level of creativity. And do you think this is going to impact the way we do marketing now, we do advertising now, and we think there will be a disconnection between what we do now and what we will do in the next few years?
Yeah, I think probably it's going to be very much different in the future. I mean, even again, I just the first thing that I mind the expectation of those kids, right? Um, I mean, if you think that Roblox has 66 million users, and they just go there because people are there, that this generation is there. So and I kind of see, what maybe, and this is just a maybe, why the all of those big brands are opening like words into this platform. Like, let's think about Nike Land, let's think about like Walmart Land, and things that they have millions of users. Maybe it's going to shift a bit in that way, right? So again, the audience is going to be in those immersive platform. It's going to be today is there. A lot of Gen Z are playing Roblox, are playing Fortnite, and it's going to be interesting to see how the behaviors of those people is going to evolve, because that's today we probably we're going to go through a kind of phase of Web 2.5, where we use Web 2 tactics to bring users into immersive spaces, right? But then in the future, I'm not quite sure actually how it's going to be. I mean, I know that there are actually some interesting projects that they raise a lot of money to be built. Like I have in mind Lighthouse, that is a search engine for immersive spaces, right? So maybe that is going to be the future of search, into immersive spaces. And when everything is going to be interoperable, will be very easier to market, um, market, travel, for instance, or to market destinations. Of course, it's all about creativity, as you just said. The creativity. We will see some changes in the creativity, even probably thanks to the generative AI that will support a lot. This category of people in the marketing. It's going to be important really to follow how this is going to evolve in the future. I have to be very honest, I don't have a clear answer yet how we are going to market destinations when Generation Z will join the workforce and will have money to spend in travels, into uh, hotels, into those kind of experiences. I'm sure that 3D and immersive experience is going to play a crucial role, where companies will invest also into immersive services, probably services that happen into immersive spaces. But it's going to be probably we will see the growth of those platforms like Roblox, or I don't know, but we will see a transition phase for marketing purposes. That's clear to me. So Um, yeah, I
Well,
think that's
you
pretty much it.
actually have a great point with meta. So basically, what you're talking about is like a meta search for immersive spaces, and that could actually be a great idea from a travel perspective. So it's something like let's say a Trivago for immersive destinations, and with
Yeah,
more interoperability, that could actually be great. Because yeah, right now the search in immersive spaces kind of sucks. Like you can go to spatial and you can search for spaces here, but spatial is only giving you back results from spatial. And if you want to know, for example, where I don't know, Gucci is, or Balenciaga, or whatever, or Nike is doing stuff in immersive spaces, you need to keep up with all the different platforms. So actually, an aggregator of immersive spaces,
Oh,
that's a freaking
oh.
good idea, Luca.
I'll tell you
yeah.
what, you've just come up with the next billion-dollar unicorn, Luca. It's a cross metaversal search engine, yeah, for assets, and I mean that's quite the impressive idea there. I like that. There's some good vision there.
Yeah,
That's what I
actually,
like about
if you go to
stuff, right? Because it always, when you talk to people, you always have this insights. You know, the best ideas I had were during this conversation, and I think, look, you need to copyright this. Kind of like now,
Quick,
get out of this
quick.
space and copyright the idea.
Let's go and start building it right now.
exactly.
But you know what?
Yeah, but you know,
It's completely feasible with like a set of standards behind everything. So if you say, right, okay, you have to you have to segment your data set so that you can search for, you know, trees or lampposts or statues, monuments, and somehow that information is stored as metadata, like a you know, like the old search engine optimization kind of tags and stuff within you know, for Google and everything. You could absolutely push it forward. It's just whether people would want that interoperability. I mean, we as a vendor want interoperability because we want to be able to push our data to as many places as possible. But does Roblox want to play fair with spatial? Does spatial want to play fair with you know, with Roblox? You know, it's just those kind of discussions. Yeah, we can all say we want to be open, but unless the competing platforms actually make something open, then it's a non-starter of a conversation.
But Paul,
yeah,
don't you think that at some point being open will be like the expectations? Because like
I think
I wrote a post, I wrote a post the other day about threats. I don't know if you read this one, but
yeah, I have, yeah.
and to me, and I was a little yeah, I wasn't concerned, but it didn't make much sense, you know, like from Mr. Centralization himself, it's coming something that you know, platforms such as mine are trying to do for a long time. But do you think that in the future, and I would love to see that, uh, the this kind of openness and interoperability and decentralization will be the norm just because users will expect that, exactly
I
now as like now people expect, kids expect immersive experiences.
I absolutely do, and you know, this is why there's this. Is it the Open Metaverse Standards Forum, Luca? I can't remember the exact
yeah,
you know,
Metaverse
group,
Standard
but
Forum.
but
MSF.
Hexagon is Hexagon is part of that. So we signed up to the charter, and you know, we're part of that, and we absolutely agree. And I think what's interesting is a lot of these big companies have proprietary formats and have proprietary ideas about how things should work, but ultimately the consumer will go where they find the least friction. That's my 100% feeling. Customer will find their way to deliver an experience as cheaply, as innovatively, as easiest as possible. And if something is closed and clunky and hard and expensive, they will just move away, and that company will lose money, and that company will lose customers. So, you know, I can't say too much about what we're doing in the background, but definitely there is a push towards openness and interoperability, and I think that's a positive move, definitely.
But again, it happened. It happened. That's another thing that happened. So to me, it's quite, and I don't understand why so many companies are so stubborn when it comes to being closed. You remember the war of browsers back in the late 90s, right? That was a very similar situation where you had take a decision as a dev, as a designer, because you knew that website would not have worked in all different browsers. And at some point, the users just said, no, fuck it, this is not going to happen. We want to make sure that I can go with whatever browser and check out whatever website. So I think again that this is just it's something that is coming probably from the bottom up. So users will expect that, and because users expect that, the market will have no other option than to adapt. And
Yeah,
again,
like
when
I
I see
said, like
Gutenberg
yeah,
doing
sorry.
there, it's a great sign.
Yeah, and like I said, as soon as you start to see a dip in your user base and you start to see people moving away because you're making things hard, then you're probably too late to realize and to make the change. So, all of these companies, Luca and I have had lots and lots of conversations about interoperability. And at the minute, there's so many different metaverse spaces. There's so many siloed ecosystems. A lot of them are just going to disappear because people will try them once, they'll find the flaw or the reason why they don't want to use it, and they'll move on to the next one. And I
Yeah,
think what's interesting is, myself and Luca have consistently come back to spatial because we find it very easy to use. It has open integrations. It integrates with various wallet systems and Ready Player Me for avatars. It's easy, it's easy to access for anyone who's not already got an account. And it does things that you expect, but all with as little friction as possible. So that's why we've come back to it. And if that conversation is happening a million times over, then that's when that customer is just going to grow and grow and grow. That company.
could it be like the WordPress of the metaverse to a certain extent?
The what? Sorry, the
WordPress.
WordPress. Yeah, exactly. In the same way that, Shopify says they're the WordPress for e-commerce, then I won't say that necessarily it's spatial that is that space, because there's still so many different ones. And Luca and I have dealt with a lot of different metaverse
Yes.
engines. But I think someone has the power to be the kind of dominant space. But at the minute, if you look at it in real terms, away from like creating these experiences that we're talking about today for hospitality, Fortnite and Roblox are those dominant platforms.
Yeah.
In real terms, they may not be talking to the right demographic yet, but they will be in a few years' time.
Yeah, but I think Luca, didn't Roblox publish some data about the audience being older than it used to be just a couple of years ago? Like maybe in the
Yeah.
20s now, something like that.
I mean,
I can probably find it.
yeah. I mean, there are some interesting chart. I was like researching a bit about Roblox a couple of weeks ago, and the demographics are kind of. I mean, there, if I'm not mistaken, around 30-40% is Gen Z, and then if I'm not mistaken, then I need to look at. I think I can find it quickly. The numbers, because I brought down, because I'm documenting this kind of stuff. But everything has been published on the web. It's still a lot. There is still a lot of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. This is something that I 100% sure. Let me look
And
at
it's
it.
on Quest now as well, for like a couple of days ago.
This is going to be a very interesting one, because now that this Roblox goes on Quest, is going to gain more audience, and people are going to look more immersive experiences in Roblox, because Roblox is kind of I mean, they have 66 million daily active users. So this is huge, right? And they grew in 1 year. They grew 10 million daily active users. And if you look back into years, it grew up 20 million daily active users, and we are talking just about Roblox. is like growing like massive. I just got the
You
data
published,
here
you
actually.
published something on LinkedIn today. I was reading it on the plane, right?
Yeah, it's 29% is Gen Z, 45% Gen Alpha. So,
Hmm.
45% of the Roblox audience is between under 9 and and 12 years old. So we're talking about, it's a good number. And 15% is between 13 and 16 years old. And then we had 24% between 17 years old and 24 years old. And then all the rest millennials plus 25 years old.
Where
So
this
it's still
where is this coming from? Directly Roblox?
is coming from Statista.
Studies. Okay, but usually it comes directly from Roblox. Okay, that's interesting. Share the link again. I will share it at the end of the show. That's interesting. Guys, I would love to
Yeah.
talk to you for another hour, but we try to keep this around 1 hour. But I do have a final question for you, and that is something that we didn't really talk about, and that is the role of AI, especially into again interoperability. Because, and Paul, this is something that I ask myself very often. But let's say that tomorrow we do have a standard, right? And we can move this beautiful destination from spatial to Roblox, for example. The problem is that Roblox still does have a complete different look and feel. So you got some metaverse platforms that are a little more realistic, some other platforms that are more like Minecrafty in a way, and um, and I think this will be pretty complicated if you want to redesign everything from scratch. Do you think that the role of AI could be to, I think the right term is morph, uh, basically adapt these spaces into the look and feel of different metaverses in the future?
Oh,
Or if not, where do
yeah,
you
yeah.
see AI?
I mean, absolutely. I mean, you've only got to look at tools like Runway, which converts video feed into different look and feel. You look at all the generative fill content stuff that's happening now, where you can fill in the spaces outside of the original image all automatically. But in particular, the Runway example is an example. You push your content in, and you say, okay, this needs to be a cartoon-like environment. So apply some element of shaders or some element of deconstruction and simplification. Absolutely, I think that there's a space for how AI can benefit here, and also make people's lives easier. It might even be that is a completely hidden operation. That happens in the background as you're going from one platform to the other, and it's the platform receiving the data that does whatever conversion it needs to make it viewable or usable in that other system. But at the end of the day, as long as we back that all up by having a very open standard like USD in the first place, then I think that's hugely important. So hopefully those open standards will then allow people to say, okay, I know what the data is going to look like coming in. I know what the data is going to look like once I've processed it, and maybe run some AI, filters or algorithms on top of it. So yeah, I think there's definitely potential, but at the minute, I think the biggest challenge is just actually sometimes just getting this data to display in these engines. Like I said, there's certain limitations on spatial, for example, and I guess each platform will have their own limitations. So there's also an element of standardization on the expectations as well, which I think will happen over time. Won't happen immediately. But yeah,
user wise user expectations.
Yes, I guess. Yeah. That's kind of what I mean. Is people will anticipate certain behavior, and that will drive. That will further then drive behavior. But like for example, what was interesting when Luca was saying we're trying to apply like a Web 0.2 mentality to a Web 3.0, Web 3 ecosystem. there's going to be that hybrid moment. And we are, I think, in that hybrid moment now where people are trying to work out and feel forwards and say, right, okay, what's this going to look like? What should it look like? And for me, I don't want to force anything yet because I'm still not sure what that should look like. And it's not going to be me that decides that anyway. It's going to be the users, because the users will use what they're happy with. But at the end of the day, we are on a stepping stone or a lily pad right now between these two, Web 2 and Web 3. And it'll be really interesting. But I, for one, absolutely agree that reality capture has a place to, a place and a part to play in the hospitality industry. If not just to gain engagement, but also to share spaces with people who won't have the opportunity to visit. And I think it's very, it's a hugely exciting time.
Not to mention what this can be used for. Building hotels, just having a glimpse of what properties could look like after renovation, for example. And it's something that probably it's a little more mainstream now, that pre-visualization in hospitality space. But of course, the application are really limitless.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. I mean, of course, it's a slightly different experience sharing, the proposed design as opposed to the as-built. And it's still, it's probably an easier process actually, because you're just taking the design model, the CAD model, the BIM model or whatever, and you're presenting it in the 3D space. But it's just as valid in getting engagement. So, getting to even build a hotel, or, where should the hotel be? How, jumping into a singular room and looking out at the view. Maybe the surrounding area of the hotel has been surveyed with a laser scanner, so that you've got a very accurate representation. So you jump into your view and you go, okay, yeah, I can see this from here, or I can see, there's a dump over in this corner of the city that I can see from this window. We need to do something about that. It's yeah.
Okay, guys, let me end this with something funny, and probably you heard about this guy that actually let me check if I can find a picture of the genius. But basically, a tourist, don't remember if it was from the US, that basically carved his name into the Colosseum. I don't know if you heard that.
Oh yeah,
just
we
It
did.
was
Yeah. Naughty guy, British guy.
British. Okay.
But,
And
but Simone, same thing happened with this lady from Switzerland recently, right?
what was that? I missed it. I don't
It
remember.
was yeah. If you there is a lady that brought on top of the Colosseum and was kind of getting a very high ticket from the police just recently.
Wow. Okay. So basically, this is becoming a thing. Okay.
Yeah, it
But
looks like that.
Unfortunately, there's always going to be idiots, Simone. I think that's the point of the post.
But it was funny to me that at the end, the guy just said, "Look, I didn't know the Colosseum was ancient," and so I started thinking, "Oh, I have another business for you. Look, I do have another business for you, because probably we will have more of these geniuses in the future. So, do you think that this guy, we will have to force this guy only to travel virtually, so we're sure that they're not making any damage to anything? So think about it, guys. This could be another source of revenue. We just do immersive spaces for bad behavior tourists. That could be a good one.
I think, do you know what? I think that is even too generous for these idiots, quite frankly, Simone. I think if you're willing to deface a monument, which you quite obviously know is thousands of years old, I don't think anyone can plead ignorance. Unfortunately, even my kids would know that is completely inappropriate. So I'm all for a complete ban. I don't even want him visiting my virtual space.
Yeah, but I think you got too much faith in humanity. Let me tell you a story, and I will leave you guys. But when I was a general manager, I remember this guy, Korean guy. So he came to me, and he asked me, "Look, where is the stadium?" and I was in Rome, right? And I said, okay, which one? The big one? We got two football stadium. And I showed a picture, and he said, no, it looks more ancient. And I started thinking, cannot really go there. And then he asked the $1 million question. I said, look, that's the stadium where the Romans used to play football. And I did understood that he was talking about the Colosseum. So I would not be very surprised that this guy didn't really know about it.
What they did? They didn't. They didn't play football in the Colosseum, Simone. That's no.
With bias, no. But for me now, it's an inside joke. Everybody that knows me, they know that I call the Colosseum the ancient Roman football stadium because cannot
Well,
really
you know
get
what?
it
We
out
will.
there.
We will never know. Maybe they did play football there, Simone. We have no real. My inner archaeologist will tell you that there is no evidence to suggest they did or didn't.
Well, but that's your job. You're an archaeologist, so you come from there. So if you find like a bowl made of the skin of of Christians or slaves, the next quest for you. Guys, it was great having you. I always finish like that. What is the best way to get in touch with you? Let's start with Luca.
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn. So Luca Lupatelli. So just easy one.
And Paul?
Yeah, you can find me all over. I mean, if you search for Paul Burrows or Reality Capture Guy on LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, anywhere, you should find me. So that's Reality Capture Guy.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. This was very interesting. I really wanted to do something a little more technical. I think we did it. It was fun as well. Paul, I hope you liked it. Thanks again for this amazing location. Luca, as always, thank you for being part of Polybius. And we'll meet again in around 4 weeks. I still don't know what we are going to talk about, but I do have a couple of ideas. And in the meantime, I'm going to steal the idea of Luca. So, Paul, I'm going to give you a call later and we can talk about that separately. Thank you so much, guys. See you next time. Ciao.
Cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.